Welcome back. We're now going to look at part 3, using loops in R. So I'm going to take you through how we go about using loops and why we might use them as well. So I'm going to go through the code and show you some examples. So just a kind of quick recap on the code we've done already. We've been using the tmap library, and this is the kind of starting code that we had to put our map together. So we have TM shape LSOA plus TM polygons and then age 0 to 4. And so we've got two kind of key parameters here. So firstly LSOA, which is the shape file or the spatial data we're mapping, so the boundaries if you like. And then we've got age 0 to 4, which is which column of data we actually want to show on the map. So which column of data do we want to use to create the choropleth map? So this one here, it creates a map for age 0 to 4. And we can expand this. So using the TM polygons function, we can add extra bits and pieces of information. So we can add a title, we can say what colors we want to use, that's the palette line there, and we can say what style or what classification we want to use. And so we've got various options with this, and there are many more options as well. These are all within the TM polygons function. So if you want a full list of all the things you could do, have a look at help. So you can put in !TM_polygons, and it'll give you the TM polygons help file, or you can have a look online, and the tmap website is quite useful. It includes explanations and examples as well. And we can expand this, so we can put n = 6, which tells us we want 6 categories. And we can then add extra bits onto this. So you see initially we've got TM shape LSOA plus, and then the TM polygons bit with all that stuff in, and then we've got another plus, and so we can add some stuff to do with the layout as well. So for example, we've got their TM layout legend title size equals 0.8. So with this size, 0.8 means reduce it to 80%. So 1 is the default value, that's the default size. If you want to make it bigger, put it above 1. If you want to make it smaller, put it below 1. And we can add various other bits as well. So we've got TM shape, TM polygons with everything else we've talked about already, and we can add these 3 as well. So for example, we can add a scale bar, and we can set various parameters. So we can set the width. Again, it's a value between 0 and 1, and the position. And the position here is made up of 2 numbers. So we've got 0.05 and 0.18. Here, this number, 0.05, is how far left to right it is. So 0 being left and 1 being right. And then the second number is how far up or down it is, with 0 being at the bottom and 1 being at the top of the map we're working with. So from here we can see it's mainly on the left, because it's pretty close to 0, and is fairly near the bottom, but kind of 18% up. Often with these, you'll have to experiment with different numbers to see what works. We've got a similar approach for the compass, so the north arrow, again, 2 numbers. And we've also got some layout information. So we're saying frame equals F, so that means false. F is for false, so no frame. We can set the title, so that's just a piece of text, the size, and the position. And again, with the position, in all of these, we can either use the numbers, or they've got some words, what they call reserved words. So I think they're top, middle, and bottom for up and down, and then left, I think is center, and then right for left or right. So this is the code we've just been through, and this is how it looks in RStudio. And we can add some extra bits to this if we want to export the map. So if we just run the code like this, it will plot the map in the plot window. So it will appear in that window and we can have a look at it. If we want to export it to a file, we can use the export option, or we can do the export in code. So we can use this thing called tmap save. That's a function. And what we actually do is we create our map as before, but we assign it to a variable. This is arbitrarily called M, but you could call it whatever you wanted. And so the map is then created, but it's saved in here. And then we use this function tmap save to save it as a file in our working directory. One of the key things to remember about this is that when we run this code, it won't show the map in the preview, in the plot window. It will just save the map into our working directory. So you run the code and it may not be very obvious that something's actually happened, but check your working directory and you'll see a file in there. This also allows us to develop this code, and we can put this code inside a loop. And we can use a loop to go through to create multiple maps. So that's our existing code, more or less. I've tweaked it a little bit and I'll explain what we've done in a minute. But we then have this for line, which is the beginning of the loop, and then we have this curly bracket at the bottom here, and that's the end of the loop. So anything between those two sections will be repeated. So just to zoom in a little bit so you can see it a bit more clearly. And we start off, we actually create this new variable called map variables. And this is so we can tell the loop which columns, which variables we want it to map. And so you see we've got 3 entries in there, all usual residents, age 0 to 4 and age 5 to 7. But they could be 4, they could be 10, they could be 100 in there. Then we start at the beginning of the loop. And just to explain a little bit about what's going on here, the way R reads it is kind of from right to left almost. So we start off saying length map variables. And so that's saying how many elements are in this thing called map variables. And so it looks it up and it comes up with 3. So essentially that line is saying for I in 1 to 3. So the 4 is the beginning of the loop. I is this value, sometimes called an iteration or a counter or something like that. And I we use in the loop, but it changes value each time we go through the loop. So the first time through the loop, it will be 1, the second time it will be 2, third time it will be 3, and so on. And so this line here is saying, repeat this loop 3 times, so 1 to 3, and then each time, the first time set I as 1, the second time set it as 2, the third time set it as 3. So first time around, I is 1. And then we run this code to create our map. Key bits that have changed. So you see we've referenced map variables I. So I is 1 we'll first go through. So that's saying map variables 1, which is all usual residents. If we go up and have a look here, this is the first element. And we can then, that's essentially what this line is saying. TM polygons, all usual residents, palettes green, blah, blah, blah. And then it runs through the rest of the code, gets to the bottom line, which is the save command. We've adapted this a little bit. So again, we use this map variables 1, and that pulls out all usual residents. So the line is essentially saying tmap save brackets n, which is the map we've created, and it's saying what the file name is, so file name equals. Paste 0 we use as a function to kind of combine different bits together. So we use that to create the file name, and the file name is map-allusualresidents.png. So the loop will save the map at that location. Then we get to the end of the loop, so we've got this closed curly bracket, and then we go back to the beginning of the loop. But this time I is 2, so I is changed now, and then we repeat the code, but with I equals to 2. So map variables I is map variables 2 now, which is age 0 to 4. We plot the map and then we save it. And again, it uses map variables I, which is 2. So our ultimate line is tmap save m file name equals space 0 map age 0 to 4.png. So that will save our second map. And we get to the end of the loop, and then we go back to the beginning, set I to 3 this time, and it's exactly the same process. So map variables I is map variables 3, which is age 5 to 7. Do the rest of the map, save it, and it saves it as the file map age 5 to 7. And then we get to the end of the loop again. We go back to the beginning. This would now be number 4, but our loop does say for I in 1 to 3. So we've done 1, 2, and 3 now. So it stops running the loop code, and it will run, if there's stuff after the loop, it will now go on and run that. This should be roughly what you get as an output. So these would be 3 separate files in your working directory. So it'd be all usual residents, age 0 to 4, age 5 to 7. There's some examples in the code of things you can do to customize this to experiment with this. So once you've got the basic loop up and running, do have an experiment, try and add, say, more variables, because we've got data all the way up to 90 plus, I think it is. So there's lots and lots of columns there. So try adding some columns and see if you get the maps that you expect. Loops are an amazingly powerful tool, and they allow us to create these multiple maps quickly and easily. So part 3 is actually using the loops in R. So it's the loop code. Have a go working through the commands, and do try experimenting with the loop code as we go through. You know, the example is 3 maps, but you could easily do 5 or 6 maps using the data we've got. And so try plotting different variables as well. Do try and experiment with the code, see what happens. If R seems to get stuck, and like we said, I think it was at part 1, if you don't get the greater than symbol on the console, R's still waiting for some command to finish, so you might not have included the closed curly brackets or something like that. So try including that, it will probably error out, and then try again. Great, good luck.